Selamat pagi.
Your video is not
Good morning. Selamat pagi.
Hey, good morning. Selamat pagi.
Hi.
Okay. Good morning, honorable speakers, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar held by the English Department of 17 Agustus Universitas Surabaya, Untag Surabaya. My name is Adeline Grace Mariana Litaay, and I am from Untag Surabaya, the English department. I will be your moderator of today's program. In this occasion, we shall have outstanding presentations from our prominent presenters, whom I believe shall enrich our insights and knowledge regarding the theme of this seminar. Creative writing in an online learning mode. Before the presentations begin, please allow me to introduce the presenters. Our first presenter is Ibu Anak Agung Istri Prihandari Satvikadewi, Magister Media dan Komunikasi from the Communication Science Department, Untag Surabaya. Ibu Vika's research interests include media and cultural studies, disability and social inclusion issues, and journalism. After Ibu Vika, next we have Dr. Novalita F. Tungka M.Pd from Universitas Sintuwu Maroso Poso. Her research interests include multimodal literacy and instructional development. Our third presenter is Dr. Natalia Christiani, M.Pd. from Universitas Ciputra, Surabaya. Teaching of young learners, mind mapping, and business communication. Next, our fourth presenter is Ibu Niki Raga Tantri, M.Pd. from Hebei Foreign Studies University, China, whose research interests include technology in ELT, distance learning, teaching English of synchronous and asynchronous online styles, and teaching Indonesian language to the speakers of other languages. The last but not the least seems to be the most handsome presenter of our seminar today. We will have Dr. John Charles Ryan, an adjunct associate professor at Southern Cross University and senior research fellow at Notre Dame University, Australia. His interests include creative writing, literary studies, and the environmental humanities. His poetry collection, Seeing Trees, a Poetic Arboretum, is forthcoming with Pinion Publishing in the United States. In September 2020, He will be the writer in residence at Oak Spring Garden Foundation in Virginia. Well, before we begin with the first presentation from Ibu Vika, I would like to invite the head of the English Department, Untag Surabaya, Mr. Mateus Rudi Supsiadji, M.Pd, to open our program. Mr. Rudi, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Grace. Good morning, presenters and all participants. In this great time, on behalf of the Department of English Literature, Universitas 17 Agustus 1945 Surabaya, or we say Untag Surabaya. I want to welcome you all and say my thankfulness to you all for joining this webinar. Okay, finally, let's enjoy the discussion through this seminar. And I'll give back the venue to the moderator. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Rudi Supsiadji, for your warm welcome. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, before the presentation begins, let us know the regulation, how the presentation will be going on. Each presenter will have 15 minutes to deliver their presentation. Should you have any questions, please drop them in the chat box, in our chat box. Don't forget to mention your name and state to which presenter you address your questions. All of the questions will be answered when all the 5 presenters already finish with their presentations. Okay, is that clear? Without further ado, I would like to welcome our first presenter, Ibu Anak Agung Istri Prihandari Satvikadewi, M.Med. She will deliver a presentation entitled Doing Research in Short Story Writing. Ibu Vika, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Miss Grace. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, my colleagues, presenters. I'm very happy that I will be able to present to you my leader writings. Actually, I'm not learning literature in particular, but I was a radio broadcaster back then in my younger years, where I have to write some radio scripts and commercials. Also, I even wrote program proposals for the clients. So I'm a bit familiar with the creative writing activities, because not only I was required to use my imagination or summon up my creative energy, but also I have to comply and think on behalf of my radio station's programming strategy. And at the same time, I have to be able to link it with the interest of listeners and advertisers. I think I would like to ask Ms. Grace to share my my presentation slides. Or I have to share from here. Okay. First of all, I'm a lecturer in communication department, so what I learned about writing and creative writing is very limited, but I use my experience to explore my potential to have good writing. I'm practicing since I was very young, but I'm not brave enough to give it to send it to the media. Uh, from the very beginning, I never think that creativity is only a matter of being the first or just creating something new. More than that, I believe that creativity is a set of mentality. It involves not only the way we think, but also the way we feel. So um, until now, I have written some short stories. Two of my writings were nominated as one of the best short stories by Kompas, national newspaper, that were in 2014 and 2018. But as an author, I don't think I'm productive enough. Averagely, I can only get one or two stories published in the media within 1 year. It's very, very unproductive. I'm writing very little story. My biggest problem were the assumption. I have my own assumption that writers must offer at least a brilliant or a brand new or no compares ideas in their short stories. Unfortunately, I'm not good enough in catching ideas. That's my weakness. So my job as an academic and my personal life as a mother of two often drive me to think that I have no time to contemplate or even simply to make me time and having a deep thought in solitude. And I think it was totally understandable if I failed to write even only one piece in a year. That's a very, very wrong thought. I think it's just my excuse to not writing. Until one day, some question came across my mind, and that question will be, um, what is the idea? I think a lot of that. What is the idea? Who should own it? Who is who has the idea? Who own the ideas? That came across my mind often, and I think also about how to connect with the ideas, because how come I have the same ideas with others, and when I uh, try to write it down, I think it's just as similar as others writing. And I also ask to myself, who is or who deserve the ideas, and when is the right time to deploy our ideas. In the next slides, I show you, this is some of my short stories. And the first picture is the cover of my book. It's the short story anthology. And the next picture is the illustration of my short stories. It published by some national media, including a newspaper and magazine. In each stories, I try uh, to share my ideas about different things. In the second picture, for example, my picture, that picture, it was illustration for my short story titled Sepasang Matryoshka. Sepasang Matryoshka means a couple of matrioskas. I try to tell the readers that we have so many people exiled and marginalized just because they are member of family that related with the PKI issues, the Communist Party. And the second picture in that, that was an illustration for my short story titled Ada Yoko di Sociëteitsstraat. There is Yoko in Sociëteitsstraat. Sociëteitsstraat is the name of a street in Surabaya. That means now the name is replaced by Jalan Veteran, and it used to be the biggest street back then in the colonial times. And I'm telling the reader that the idea in that story is there is a man who cannot move on from their first love. But I was using the crowded street, the old crowded street in Surabaya as the setting. So that was I used to writing the short story. I keep questioning because I think I must be went wrong when I presume that a good short story always emerges from the writer's extreme emotion or extreme condition. Either it is an overwhelmingly happy or severely sad. The next question will be, for how long does a writer have to experience those extreme feelings so they can write well? Then I found out that the ideas is not how to find the ideas. It is more about how to let it show up. As for me, the best way is to do research. The slide before this, Miss Grace, now I give some example here. I do library research and ethnography for finding the right settings of my stories. I also do survey in order to find the tendency of people most likely do over particular issue. I also do interviews and observation for finding the depth of someone's feeling or to reveal people's hidden emotions towards unspoken things on and unwritten facts. I think I just cannot ask vividly to them, how do you feel? But I did a observation. I watch their expression. I'm following their social media, so I get the feeling of people who feel some particular feeling. And I also do content analysis to find the exact words. The words diction is very important to me because the exact words not just come up as we writing. It has to be produced from a meticulous research. So that was I do in my attempts to find the ideas in writing a short story. The next slide, please. The ideas and even the core or the essence of ideas, I think, will naturally appear to the reader, though it was very slightly or subtle, through our words, through our sentences, through the setting we describe in detail, and also through the plot we try to build, through the way we begin and end the story. Once we connect all this idea with unique style of storytelling, because every writer has different kind of storytelling, we are halfway. I said halfway because we also need to do editing and recheck our writing. We are halfway to having an authentic creative writing manuscript, an original and interesting short story. In my experience, it always begins with a deep research. We will not be preoccupied with worrying about what we should write or concerning about how to be perceived differently from other writers. If we do a research, we have so many opportunity to uh, perceive the ideas. We are um, ideas magnet. With research, we are the ideas magnet. Instead, we will instead of waiting for imagination, contemplating, and making an excuse because of writer's block, we will concentrate more on writing because we know what uh, we have to write. We will concentrate on writing the accurate data that we have earlier and we obtain using reliable methods artistically. That was the idea of research in doing um, writing or creative writing a short story. That is my presentation. I wish you can enjoy it and understand it what I'm trying to say. Thank you, Miss Grace.
Thank you so much, Ibu Vika, for your outstanding presentation. Thank you for teaching us how to find the ideas, how to find the right setting for the story, and for telling us that the most important thing is how to do the research. Okay. After Ibu Vika, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our second presenter. Let us welcome her. Dr. Novalita F. Tungka, M.Pd. She will deliver a presentation entitled Tools to Write Creatively. Dr. Novalita F. Tungka, M.Pd., the time is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Ibu Grace. I hope all of you participants can hear me. And then I would like the operator to show my slides. Okay, good morning, dear participants from all over Indonesia and also from other countries. Thank you so much for joining this webinar. And my name is Novalita. I'm from Universitas Sintuwu Maroso, Poso. It's in Sulawesi Tengah. And as already introduced by our dear moderator, Ibu Grace, my research interests are in multimodal literacy and instructional development. My topic today is about tools to write creatively. Ibu Grace, can you present my slides? Oh, okay, then I'll present it myself. Okay, participants, can you see the slides? If yes, can you please type in the chat box so I can start from here? Okay, yes, good. My title is about tools to write creatively. Okay, because my research interests are in multimodal literacy, so I focus mostly in how to visually present our writing. So I'm gonna organize my slides here into some questions that I would like to answer. The first question is about I want to write. And if I want to write, what should I write about? This is about the creative writing. So the joy of creative writing is that we can write actually about everything. We can write journal, we can or journaling about our hobbies or daily activities. We can write some essays on current affairs, and we can even write mini story inspired by series of photos that we have. As you can see in my slides, the second slides. Okay, the moderator, can you move to the next slide? Dear participants, can you see the slides? It's about question number 1. I want to write. If you can see my slides, please type in the chat box. Okay. Thank you, the moderator. Next, I would like to answer question number 2. Can you please move the slide to the next slide? Question number 2, it's on slide 3. Wait. Okay, participants, can you see my slides? Okay, if you can see my slides, I move to question number 2. To help me write creatively, I need tools. I need some tools to help me generate the ideas. So in my slides, you can see that in the digital and the online learning idea, we are actually very lucky because the internet has provided us tons of apps and online tools to assist us in our writing process. So you can see in the slide, here are some apps that I found helpful enough to help me write. And all these apps can be found on the Play Store, and I'm sure it is also available on iOS App Store. The first is Question Diary. The Question Diary is providing tool of writing generator. Writing generator give us daily question to think about and to reflect on, and of course to write it. So in the slides you can see there are some questions. There are 5 questions. For example, close your eyes and go to happy place. What do you think about it? And you can write it down on the apps. And then life is boring without. You can write it and then you can publish it. The next slide, the next app is Haiku Jam. Haiku Jam is an application of a social writing platform. This platform is inspired from Japanese poetry style, haiku. And then we can find tools in this app. They are topics, categories, templates for publishing our writings, and of course, friends to socialize with. And then the next slide is the next apps that I want to share is Story Plotter. Story Plotter also provides us free tools. For example, like templates such as micro, short, middle, and long story, and also free mode. And Story Plotter here, it guides us to develop our stories in form of questions. Questions like to guide us to write or to decide our themes, to give interesting points in our stories and tasks, even problem solving and character development. Okay, the next slide. The next slide is about the most popular social media. It's Instagram. I say that this is the most popular visual media because Instagram, it shares or it provides us visual. Here's are the slides. I'm very sorry, participants. Wait a minute. Can you see the slides now? I hope you can see the slides. Okay. If you cannot see the slides, don't worry. I will share the presentations here with all of the presentations from the presenters after the keynote speakers has presented his material. Okay, the Instagram's writing prompt. So we can actually use hashtag writing prompts to help us write and to generate some ideas by maximizing the use of Instagram. Sometimes we only use Instagram for publishing uh, our daily activities, but actually we can level it up into share our experiences creatively, of course, by using visual information or photos. And then the next is 36 questions. It is from pw.org. This is a website specifically for writing an Indian-based app. And then the tools that we can find inside these apps are prompts, writing prompts, and then topics. There are various topics published all day, published even in hourly, and then a beautiful template for publishing and many other tools. You can download all the apps that I shared here on Google Play Store or even iOS App Store. Next is question number 3. What are the tools that will help me to polish my writing? I want to share 2 tools here that I find very conveniently to use to share to edit my writing. The first is Grammarly, of course. All of you already familiar with this editing website, and also Hemingway Editor. Here in the slides, I present the differences between Grammarly and Hemingway. Let's see here in the Hemingway, in the Grammarly doesn't allow free users to choose style that we want. And then they scan all the sample writings as general genre. While Hemingway doesn't give information about the genre of the writing. But here we can see the differences between, the similarities between Grammarly and Hemingway. Grammarly, you can see here that it directly corrects our mistakes. The one that they think or they are operated to think about are the mistakes. While actually, in my humble opinion, grammar mistakes are not really important if you are a beginner writer, because all about the beginner writer is about building our confidence first. And then when we are confident enough to publish our writing, we have to be careful with the grammar and then also the style and the diction. That's my opinion. And then this is the Hemingway editor. See that the Grammarly and Hemingway actually use a similar system. They are using color system and providing writing score for the users. So for the Hemingway, they use grade 4, while for Grammarly, they use 78, 0 to 100 scales. Okay, my next slide is question number 4. After editing my writing, I want to visually beautify my writings. What are the tools that I can use? I categorize the tools that I often use here in three categories. The first one is the tools that are free. We can download it, free pick and picture chart. You can find it on the website. You can also find it on your Google browser on your handphone, smartphone. And then the next, this is a premium editing websites. You can see the Infogram and Genially. I personally favor Genially because it offers interactive visuals and they publish our writings directly. However, because they are premium websites, it doesn't allow us to download the results. Also, with the Infogram doesn't allow us to share to download the results, but they provide the link. So if you want to publish our writing results on our social media or you want to use it as a presentations, we can use it online. Oh, the next category, I'm sorry, I forgot this one. So when I have more time to surf the web for inspiration, I choose this for Freepik, Picture Chart, Infogram, and Genially. But when I still have more time to spend, I have leisure time, I use these three. These three are my favorite also. Adobe Spark, and then Canvas and Trello. Trello and Adobe Spark actually have quite similar layout, so they are friendly enough to be used by the beginner visual designers like me. I'm the beginner one, and then Canvas is also free. We can use it on the website directly, or we can download the app on Google Play Store. Now, question number 5. After I visually beautify my writings, what do I need to do? For me myself, I need support for my writings. So the right support comes from the right community. That's why I also use applications to become part of a community of creative writing. Here there are two apps that I share. The first one is Witco, and the second one is Haiku Jam app. I already explained about these two apps in the previous slides, but you can see the layouts here. This is Witco. It has some categories here. You can see the methodology, and then I can see here this is art, a letter, nature, and it provides templates for us, so we can just type on the visual template and publish it directly. And some of our friends in the app can comment on our quotes or our short poems. And then the Haiku Jam. Haiku Jam also a social writing community. We can use it for free and we can also upgrade it to become a premium users. But the most important is that we become a part of a community. That's how we try to develop ourselves, and then we try to respect ourselves and value ourselves as probably aspiring creative writers. And then the next slide is a more serious writing community. Yeah, poets and writers or pw.org. Okay, here in this website, they already provide communities that we can choose. For example, we can ask the websites to show the writers who write in any kind of genre. For example, if you are interested in the thriller or horror genre, you can find writers who are also interested in those topics and then have been published or haven't been, self-identify, interested in working with any group, fluent in any kind of languages. Yeah, you can choose whether you are fluent in English or you are comfortable enough to read some products from writers who speak other languages than you. It's all yours. It's all in your click. And then the other website is scribefile.com. This is this website also provides community for us. So if you want to become a serious writer, we can use this websites, and then we can find community that is suitable with us, and then that we find comfortable with our needs. And the next is question number 6. Yeah. What about you are an introvert? Let's say that you are an introvert, or you are not confident enough. Yeah, you are not confident yet to publish your writing. Or you want to write, you want to publish, but only if you want to, only when needed, only when your lecturers ask you to publish your writings. I have some app here. The name of the app is Milkshake app. This is actually designed for supplementary web tools for Instagram. But I found it very convenient to use and very beautiful if you want to try yourself and then you don't want others to read your works. You can use these websites. The link will be active only if you publish it. You can see on the slides. Let's see the preview here, my topics. These are the pictures that are provided by the websites. You can change it. You can change it using your own pictures, or you can use pictures from stock websites such as Adobe Spark. Let's see this one. Recommendation number 2, recommendation number 3. We can edit the and then we can write something. We can even attach some link to YouTube videos or to other websites. So this website is a hidden gem for me. I'm gonna show you also the pictures of these websites. Yeah, this is the example. Let's see that I tried the websites 2 days ago, and I posted some of my material today in the websites. Let's see. This is the template. They provide template. Writing creatively, write authentically and effectively. You can also use emoji there to type, and then this is our offers to us. Then see that this is very beautiful. So if you are an introvert writer, you can use this. The name of the app is Milkshake app. Here I already will type there. You can find it on Google Play Store, or you can find it on the websites. Okay, we now come to the last slide, and this slide brings me to the end of my presentation. So to conclude, I've shown you some online tools that I find very, very useful for me, and then to explore how fun it is actually to write and to publish our creative writing using technology application. And with those tools, I also believe that you have your favorite tools also. You can write it, you can type it on your in the chat box, and other participants can read it and they can share their experiences with their favorite tools too. So to conclude, I want you to remember 3 things. First, you have to choose apps that have helpful tools. What are the tools? The plot and character generator, the template, the writing editor, some infographics, and also writing communities, a perfect tool. And then the second thing to remember that you have to choose apps that publish visually, because we are now in the 21st century, then everything is visually interesting. You can choose the apps that publish visually. For example, Flickr, Adobe Spark, and Milkshake app. And then the third, but the most important one, is Write. Thank you. This is my presentation. I'm so sorry for the inconvenience, and I hand this back to Ibu Grace as the moderator. Thank you, Ibu Grace.
Thank you, Dr. Novalita F. Tungka, M.Pd, for your interesting talk. Thank you for reminding us how fun it is to write, and moreover, to publish our writing. Thank you for teaching us how to visually beautify our writings, and thank you also for telling us, remember, participants, grammar mistakes are fine for beginners. Okay. Next, we have Dr. Natalia Christiani, M.Pd. Ladies and gentlemen, she will deliver a presentation entitled Dig, Explore, and Produce from Idea to Product. Dr. Natalia Christiani, M.Pd, the time is yours.
Iya, dia minta izin untuk share sendiri. Kasih akses, akses.
Can everybody see my PowerPoint? Yes? Shall I start?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, let me start then.
Can you hear my voice?
Okay, good morning, everyone. Hi. Today I'm going to present to you all. Actually, I would like to share what I have done towards my essential English classes. So far, I have been teaching business English. Okay, and I see some of my colleagues here also joining this webinar. Thank you for your participation. Dig, explore, and produce from idea to product. Okay, I would like to start by asking you a question. If you want to be participating, please answer in our chat box. How do you start to write when you are given a theme? Okay, I would like to see whether, okay, okay. Yeah, there are various answers. Thank you. There are, how you start your writing. Okay. Okay. How about this? My voice is quite loud enough. Okay. So let's keep the questions until the end of my presentation. Okay. How do you start to write when you are given a theme? I'm here, Natalia Christiani. I'm from Universitas Ciputra, Surabaya, East Java, Indonesia. And this is my email address. Okay. I would like to start by giving you a very interesting quote from Bolton, 1999. He said, trust yourself. You can't write the wrong thing. Give yourself the gift of this writing. Okay. How should we teach our students to trust themselves in writing? Okay, to start their writing. Yeah. Another book, another author, Dawson, 2005, he wrote Creative Writing and the New Humanities. I'm interested in his first chapter entitled From Imagination to Creativity. Wow, very interesting. He said that creative writing is a subject or course on a study which the students produce writing, which is generally stated in a creative one. So the creative itself, he defined as original, unconventional, expressive, and etc. You can add the definition by yourself. So that's the word of creative. Okay, why? Okay, types of creative writing. There are so many or several types of creative writing, and I'm so amazed that by study.com, okay, study.com stated that there are several, from poetry, plays until personal essays, can be also included as types of creative writing. Like what I stated before, that I'm a English communication lecturer. So I see that speeches, okay, I use the presentation skill as the skill should be taught, or we teach presentation skill at the second half semester. So we see that speeches here about public speaking or how to teach the student to be a good presenter. It also can be as a part of creative writing. Okay, I will share you later. So here again, I would like to start by the first word, digging. What we do in the digging? Okay, if you see here, wow, in our brain, okay, there are so many things to say. Also in our students' brain. Don't stop, don't ever stop what the students think about a word. Let it flow, let it comes out. Just like in this mind mapping. The mind mapping started with goals and then you can see the beautiful ones. But if the students will make like this, they will not have enough time to do the presentation. It needs maybe one semester because we have to teach the basic of mind mapping itself. Okay, this is one of my dissertation also. Okay, if you see, we start from the central using a landscape paper. We use a bubble in the middle. The middle word is a theme itself. Okay, and then we draw, we make some branches outside that. If you see this also, see, people start from the middle. You put your theme over there. You do not know what to write. What title should I present? So don't stop yourself. Just take a paper, or maybe you can use like me later. I'm using this Zoom, the whiteboard of the Zoom, to teach the students how to brainstorm their idea, how to dig the theme into becoming ideas. And some like this. Okay, but I'm not asking the students to draw, not yet, because this is not a mind mapping class. But I'm asking them to do, just write, just brainstorm your brain, your thoughts. Just write the theme in the central and then do the brainstorming. Okay, that's what I mean by digging. So you start by writing it in the middle, the theme, and then you start to write anything about that theme. Okay, later I'll give you example. The second word, explore. This is the example where I did in my class when we still have WFO, working from office, yeah, working from office. I give them the theme of woman, okay, and then they write in the central. Okay, frankly speaking, that's my handwriting, yes, but all of the words on the glassboard are not from me, from the students. I'm asking them to just call out any words regarding related with woman. They say, oh, hard worker, full of love, shopping, activity, mother, makeup, gossip, pregnant, talkative, and so forth. Okay. After that, I'm teaching them, okay, now let's explore, because they are still essential English. So they are the basic, let's say, pre-intermediate students, because they already university students. I'm asking them to highlight 3 words or phrases using one shape of a picture. For example, circle. I'm using circle and also color, red, if you can see. Okay. Okay, now let's choose 3 phrases that according to you, these phrases have the same topic. They choose, okay, this one, okay, care, okay, care, emotional, feelings, very good. If we make these 3 subtopics to be one topic, according to you, what it is about? With a very hard, a very interactive discussion, and say, woman's nature, very good. So that's one topic, one topic. Can you see? And then we try to again and again explore another topics can be written later. Hard worker, ma'am. Okay, let's give another shape, triangle. I'm using blue also. Hard worker, talkative, activity. All of the choices, words, phrases are given by the students. They are very good. They said hard worker, talkative, and activity are included as womanpreneur. Okay. And then the last one is role of a woman. Okay, role of a woman, girlfriend, wife, and then mother. Okay, that's a very good. Okay, so here I would like to share that when you are asking your students to brainstorm their thoughts, their ideas, just don't stop Just write what they think about the word in the middle, as many as they can, and then explore it. How to explore it? By finding 3 phrases or only 3 words with the same topic or idea. Circle them, give the topic name of those 3 phrases. The number 4 here, I'm stating this, do again point number 1 until 3 for another topic using like before, using triangle or using a square or star. It's up to you, make it fun. Okay. Okay, from those 3 topics, Bapak Ibu, I'm asking them to choose only one. Can you see? From one, there are 3 topics, but I'm asking them to choose one topic, and then they choose, okay, ma'am, woman nature, very good. Okay, woman nature will become our topic, and please remember that your subtopics, which will be your content of your speeches later, are emotional, feeling, and care. No need for them to find another subtopics or main points. From these, they can decide the title. We discuss again about the title. Do again, ask them again. Okay, what kind of title can you give? Respecting women, one-on-one, emotions, bubble of women, no woman, no cry, okay? The best things that God gives in women. So many ideas from the students I wrote on the glassboard. And finally, we discuss, okay, which one is the best answer? And then they choose this one, ma'am. The downside of using too much feelings. Oh, okay. So now, after having the title, prepare your outline. That's what I mean by produce later. Yeah, produce. So how about in an online learning mode? Like what I said before, I'm using Zoom because since in the middle of March, exactly when the second half semester started, we work from home, we study from home, we use Zoom, we use whiteboard. And then I'm using whiteboard. I do believe Bapak Ibu here, I'm so happy you are from various cities of Indonesia and also outside of this country. Sri Lanka, thank you very much. India probably also come. Thank you. And you can maximize your Zoom, your whiteboard, okay? And this is one example of my activity using whiteboard when we already, oh yeah, the theme is about not brainstorming. The theme here is about myself, because this is the first time the students start to do the speeches and to do the brainstorming. I give them the general or common theme, myself, and then I'm giving the example of me myself. Okay, they know already about me, so okay, this is myself, ma'am Natalia. So what do you think about me? Oh, there are so many, blah 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 blah. And then I choose. They know that I'm an MC, master of ceremony. They know I'm a career woman. I'm gorengan seller. You know gorengan, Bapak Ibu, fried snack like fried banana. I'm also selling it. It's not a promotion, but I love to do it. As a lecturer, I try to collaborate with my neighbors. If they they sell they make the gorengan and I sell in the office. I came in the office at 7 in the morning, very early. Yeah, 30 minutes before we start working. And some of the staff also come to my office to buy it. So they know about it and then they know how to make the title. So these 3 subtopics become one topic, and then blah, blah, blah from Rifki, give this from me. And then finally, we go, how hobbies becoming profitable jobs. Sometimes by having the title, the students already secure to start their writing, especially the outline. This is from Rifki. When he started to do myself, he chose have coffee shop, young entrepreneur, contractor, and you can see on your right, left hand, from those subtopics, and then he tried to make some titles, and finally he chose how to become young entrepreneur. What about the produce? What he produced for Rifki, because like what I said, this is the first thing the students started to brainstorm to produce what they have, dig and explore. Rifki made directly the PowerPoint, not the outline yet. Okay, but yeah, it's okay. This is the first time for him. Okay, And several of my students also, they did myself, very interesting one. They can use the apps, they use their papers, okay, and then they know what to do. At least that's first, because sometimes when we give them theme and then the theme is so abstract, it's so general, they do not know what to write. So this is the way we try to organize their mind to generate their ideas to become a product. One of the example of Fio here, uh, about herself also, she made successfully the draft, okay, and this is her presentation. So actually the last product, instead of outlining, they also should present because they learn about presentation skill. But at least what amazed me, they learn how to do the presentation step by step quite well, quite good. They are entrepreneurs, yeah, future entrepreneurs. Okay, from digging, exploring, and then we come to the producing. Like what I said before, produce a draft. The draft can be an outline draft, okay, a detailed online draft. They know about the start, the content, and the finish. That's becoming, probably that will be another uh, topic of presentation, okay? So how I teach them to do the presentation using the strategies. So this is the outline. The outline, they have the start, they have the content, they have the finish, okay? Uh, if you see the content here, there is the first main point. It means the first subtopic. They have emotion. The second subtopic, or for example, Rifki has young entrepreneur. The second topic about having a coffee shop. The third about becoming a contractor. Okay, so the students only try explain, elaborate, give examples, support their themes, their main points with data, facts, and etc. Okay, I would like to give okay, these are from other students, girls. Okay, the ladies are very creative also. They, if you see, make the draft over there, and completely the outline is very complete also, from the opening, the start, the content until the finish. Okay, another examples from my other students, Eugene. Okay, see, look at the writing. They love. Okay, so let's review some concepts. I would like to sum up. We have, when in the digging part, just let your students brainstorm their thoughts, their minds, write as many as possible, because from those words, they can explore. They can find the phrases. They can later find the topic and subtopics. Okay, and then they produce an outline. The outline can be extended into the what skill you are teaching. For me, speeches, which start with writing. So they produce the last learning outcome is presentation using PowerPoint. So from the idea, which is very abstract, becoming a clear idea, and it becomes a product. So I would like to repeat my question at the beginning. How do you start to write when you are given a theme? Hopefully from my presentation, you can answer it. That we can start by making do the digging by having a brainstorming, and then explore it, and then produce an outline. Even it is still draft, but let the student write. Okay, and later we can give feedback from their writing. The point is, don't just let the border for the students to stop writing. Appreciate them. I think that's all for my presentation today. I hope I'm not spending more than 15 minutes. I'm trying to these 33 slides to be more slides. Cool. Thank you. See you later. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to write down your question in our chat box. Thank you. I would like to hand over my presentation to Bu Grace. Thank you, Bu Grace.
What a great presentation, Dr. Natalia Christiani, M.Pd. Thank you so much. That was 15 minutes plus 1 minute actually. Only plus 1 minute is okay. Thank you so much for teaching us how to start with the brainstorming. Then later we'll produce something. You also give example how to transform a theme into ideas and so on. Many other things. Thank you so much once again. Ladies and gentlemen, our fourth speaker is Ibu Niki Raga Tantri M.Pd. She will deliver a presentation entitled Teaching Essay Writing during the pandemic at Hebei Foreign Studies University, China. Let us all welcome Ibu Niki Raga Tantri M.Pd. Ibu Niki, the floor is yours.
All this recommend to the site and hear my okay. Uh, would you like to type yes? Oh no, you cannot hear my voice. Okay. How about now? All right. So I think it better if I just hold my uh, audio in here, audio tools. Okay. Good morning everyone. Selamat pagi Bapak dan Ibu. Yeah. Today I'm very happy to have the chance to speak in this amazing webinar hosted by English Literature Department uh, Universitas 17 Agustus 1945 Surabaya or UNTAG. Thank you very much. Let me share my screen. Oh, already, yeah? Okay. I'm sorry. This is the screen from the moderator, or all right. So let's begin with the first slide. Can you make it like a slideshow? I'm sorry for the moderator or for the operator. Or I'm sorry for the operator. Could you make it no. The first, better if I operate by myself. Is that okay? Okay, sorry. Thank you. Okay, let me share from here. All right. All right. This one. This one. Okay. Um. All right. Let me start. Today, I will share my experience in teaching essay writing to my students in China, mainly about the online learning, yeah, that I employed in my English class. All right, this one. Um, okay. Before I talk about the teaching writing in my English class, let me introduce my university. Here is Hebei Foreign Studies University. It is located in Sichuan City at Hebei Province. It's the part of the northern China. Anyway, Hebei Foreign Studies University students, besides learning a major field of study, they also learn some foreign languages from 71 languages of Europe, Asia, Africa, Oceania, North and South America. So let's go to the next slide. In here, you can see the photo, a lot of students in here, and I hope all of you can spot me in the middle. Yes, this was the photo of my English class in the last semester. They were so happy here because probably it was the last meeting of my class and winter break was waited for them. Um, Currently, I'm a teacher at International Finance Department. I teach my native language, Bahasa Indonesia, and English. For my English class, I'm responsible for teaching 3 classes of reading and writing. And the goals of learning English in my department are to provide the student with communicative English skills and to prepare the student for CT4. So a brief explanation about CT4 is stand for College English Test with band 4 to measure the English proficiency of undergraduate students in China. And one of the aspects that is being tested is a free writing essay. All right, and then let's go to here. Then the teaching creative writing in my class is mostly about essay and reading skill that are taught to comprehend the students' language knowledge and skill before they go to the essay writing activities. Yeah, so you can see in here in the chart that the other points that I would like to emphasize in here is that since uh, we currently, and I think all of us are in the extraordinary time, yeah, in conducting teaching and learning activities. Also, due to fighting for coronavirus, so we have to implement distant and online learning. Here I am. I'm in Indonesia, and my students are in China. And bear in mind that currently the student in my department should join 4 hours English online classes. And it is normally happen in the face-to-face classes and the other 14 more online classes per week. And the teacher should at least teach more than 20 hours per week for the online classes too. For further explanation about the online class, let's go to the next slide. All right, this one, I would like to talk first about the concept of online learning. This one, yeah. Okay. Here, I'd like to begin with the concept of time in online learning. As we know that there are differences between real world and virtual world, as well as the definition time or even happens in online learning. If we can see from the differences of synchronous and asynchronous definition in here, there are times that in real world does not have such in virtual world. In virtual world or online world, we have a refer to students' time, which is called as asynchronous learning. While in synchronous time, it's more into agreement, which probably happen in Indonesia or also in many universities, is institution time or teacher's time. Meanwhile, in the real world, in terms of the face-to-face meetings, it happens in a real time, which the teaching and learning activities occur and cannot be replayed without the help of tools such as video recorders. Um, that is why conducting online learning need to consider the time, because it is not about whether the online class should be conducted synchronously all the time or asynchronously one. Even synchronous need to be accompanied by asynchronous to meet students' learning styles, and asynchronous needs asynchronous to create engagement. In fact, any consideration on defining the learning goals based on the time in online world will be much beneficial and efficient for students to learn. Okay. Now you can see in here, there is a picture that probably you also can find in the internet. Yeah. In online learning, many studies discuss on how students react or interact, how to create dynamic online class, and how many students responses. When it is said that engagement is important in online learning, yes, it is important. However, online learning is a different world, which is more underpinning on student styles. If we notice in the learning groups via media social such as Telegram, in Indonesia is called as Coolgram or Cool Tweet, yeah, learning groups via Twitter. There are some participants who are like to be a silent reader, and we cannot assess verbally and physically whether this kind of participant are following or not. The only thing that we know is that the result of their required tasks or projects, whether they fulfills the scores criteria, and then we judge their ability on the learning competencies. Okay. Seeing from this phenomena, there are several studies that acknowledge this learning style. Let's see how open university around the world conducting distance learning, or the other university that have already organized MOOC. How many participants who graduated and dropped out from MOOC, and how open university administer the distance learning methodology. We can study how this institution organize the autonomous or independent characteristic of participant, and I believe we can direct our attention to the utmost students' necessities in preparing and guiding them as an independent learner during this outbreak, rather dealing with the students absent in our online class. Okay, so this one. Um, the next is my footage when I was teaching for the theme of technology in my my class. Yeah. My student and I compare what online application used in China and the most people use around the world. It is well known that China has their own apps in keeping themselves being updated and informative. Also, for your information, you cannot use the apps that you use in your country and when you are in China. You can see the comparison in the slide. Yeah, there is a Weibo, a Baidu, and Google, and etc. Yeah, comparing. Um, as well as when I'm conducting synchronous online teaching, I use Chinese apps, namely Ting Ting for the pinyin name or Ding Talk for the English name. I will explain further about this app. And then let's move to the next slide. Yeah. Um, since the main reason of teaching online in my department was to transfer and resume the learning from face-to-face classes into online class, the need of teaching online was merely on synchronous without asynchronous one. The department tried to find the most suitable app and decided that TikTok could provide nearly the face-to-face learning activities in a virtual environment. Okay, and then um, let's go to the next. Yeah, I will talk about the online application in here, uh, mainly about synchronous and Ding Talk. Okay, so what is Ding Talk? Ding Talk is a new platform in telecommunication app that provides video chat and voice calls between computers, tablets, mobile devices over the internet. Yeah, um, compared to Skype, yeah, the other internet platform, telecommunication platform that released. DingTalk was launched in the end of 2016. Yeah. The features of DingTalk at the beginning I used, which was about in the beginning of March 2020, was exceptional compared to the other video conference apps. Um, I found that DingTalk was able to perform broadcasts from mobile phone device that includes screenshot feature in which the other apps could not provide for it at the time. In group live mode, this app could automatically record our screen teaching and then would be processed as a video playback. Furthermore, the chat message I sent to my student were translated automatically from Chinese to English, yeah, or English to Chinese, as well as Chinese to Indonesian and Indonesian to Chinese. And it also could transcribe the voice message into written message. That was in my thought that this app was extraordinary because there was no any video conference that offer these features at that time, yeah, during the outbreak in China. Um, During my online teaching career, this application served major distinct features seen from the other synchronous telecommunication and asynchronous learning model apps. It is an app, a quarter LMS or learning management system, which is mobile phone friendly that is able to administer and conduct teaching and professional group project, yeah, through mobile phone. I use the term a quarter LMS because the teacher user can assign class group, assign the schedule of lesson, administer quizzes and tasks, even receive the reports about how many percentages of the students who submitted the assignment. Moreover, the interface of the platform is quite simple. Even from my perspective, it is as simple as message line app such as WhatsApp or Line. Okay, and the next is besides assigning synchronous online class, this app provided recorded live lecture from the live broadcast or live streaming for YouTube or Instagram term. Recorded live lecture is the most important feature in synchronous teaching that can differentiate between online and face-to-face classroom. This is vital because the student can resume their learning if they miss the class in consequence of bad internet network, which is the most common reason for students to be absent from class. The prominent ability of this feature is it can automatically store the recorded live broadcast lecture in the form of video playback inside the app so that the students can obtain the video collections of the live lecture and play them anytime all through mobile phone device in here. Okay. All right, and then let's go to the teaching essay writing at my university. Okay. Um, The result of creative writing in Hebei Foreign Studies University is seen as the final competence after the students learn the other language skills such as listening, speaking, and reading. Therefore, the final product could not be seen solely because of the benefits of learning one language skill. The writing skills are thought integrated with the other language skills. The place of English essay writing is in the end as the reflection of the students' learning journey through given text and their understanding toward the concept and content of the learning topic. Uh, the extracting ideas was obtained through multi-genre texts which reach of cultural and motivational beliefs of the Chinese people, and it served in the integrated listening, reading, speaking, and writing materials with communication, cultural, and cognitive principle. So you can see the chart in here. And this one is how I teach essay writing through discourse teaching. Mm, Here, the teaching of English as a writing is employed discourse teaching. The discourse teachings becomes the main body of the text, and it aims to develop students' ability to be an efficient reader and acknowledge the learning content when they deal with English texts. The discourse modes used are storytelling, question cause thinking, outlining, and key point extracting and chapter reviewing. All right. This one. So I took the example in here from the learning topic. Yeah. Um, the reading text mostly used to teach English class is in the form of storytelling. The form of storytelling provides the student with the sense of sublimity of love, question and answer of the human nature, and to have an impact on soul. Yeah, you can see in here the learning topic is as long as everyone gives a little love, the world will become better. Um, so the activities that can be followed is like, for example, having a discussion with partners, and then students are required to make up the story or each building up one sentence of student, and then stand up and it states the first sentence, and then the next student continues his sentence, and etc. And I think all of you know these kind of activities. Um, in here, yeah, in this slide, you can see my live broadcast when I introduced a short story entitled Love is a Fallacy, written by Max Coleman for the learning theme of life and logic. It was a very interesting story since the student could learn kinds of logical fallacies through story. For example, like dicto simpliciter, ad misericordiam, hasty generalization, and false analogy. The learning activities was conducted before the final stage of essay writing for the theme of logic, which is sunk cost fallacy. And then this one, the next teaching activities aim to gain the critical thinking of the students. After the students read the reading parts, they were asked to connect the values of the text with the actual student situation or daily life. The question were structured and should bring the sense of human nature and the soul. Okay, so this one you can see um, in here. In this slide, I tried to gather students' critical thinking by having discussion after the reading activities for the theme of secrets to beauty. And in the previous session, we talked a lot whether people should undergo plastic surgery or not. This was for the preparation for writing an essay related to the definition of beauty when it comes to an attractive people and an average people when applying for the same job. All right. The next mode is outlining. For the teaching English writing at Hebei Foreign Studies University, there is the need to teach students with the outline of the essay writing. I witnessed some students still had difficulties in implementing the basic essay structure. So for example, like how to um, generate the introduction part, the body and content, and also the closing or the conclusion part. As you can see in my slide in here, uh, um, this is the situation when I thought the events happen in narrative story after we have the reading activities about logical fallacy. And then the next is in the key point mode, the student learn the terminology around the reading text. They are guided to focus on reconstructing the internal organization model of the text or chapters in order to help students quickly and accurately grasp the learning theme. By providing some expression related to the terminology in terms of their relationship of their group words, the student learn different types of terminology and articles and use the knowledge of the problem to write different essay. Here you can see the result of how I thought my students about the terminology in the short story. So I have to prepare first what is dicto simpliciter according to sources, yeah, and also my understanding before teach it to my student. And then the next is here you can see the result of my student work. This is still the rough draft, and they will use the feedback from peers and teachers for their final essay project in this last term. Okay, so it brings me to the conclusion. The situation of teaching and learning during the pandemic at Hebei Foreign Studies University are mainly conducted synchronously online. And then the essay writing at the university is taught in discourse teaching that support communication, cultural, and cognitive principles. And then the synchronous learning tools providing live streaming and video playback, since the student could not participate in full synchronous online learning class. And in synchronous essay teaching learning, emphasize in the learning activities that demands direct responses. So for example, like students consultation and discussion on points that need to be highlighted from the student works and learning materials. All right. That's all I have to say about my experience in teaching essay writing to my students in China during the pandemic. And before I end my session, I'd like to close with a quotation based on the whole experience I gained during my online teaching career. There is no conventional classroom in both online synchronous and asynchronous teaching. If you want to know in depth how these online learning times work, our mind should shift from conventional to online learning environment. Okay, thank you. If you have any question, please leave the question in the chat box. And now I will pass you over to my colleague, Ibu Grace.
Thank you so much, Ibu Niki Raga Tantri, M.Pd. That was such an informative and interesting presentation. Thank you so much for sharing so much with us about the modes that we can apply in teaching essay writing and so on. And by the way, you look younger than your students in the photo that you shared with us. Thank you so much once again, Ibu Niki Raga Tantri, M.Pd. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to our keynote speaker, Dr. John Charles Ryan, who will talk about poetry in an online learning mode, adaptation, creativity, and innovation. Dr. John Charles Ryan, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Ibu Grace. And how is my volume? Can you hear me? Everyone can hear? Okay, great. Okay, so thanks very much to everyone who's in attendance and also to the organizers today for this opportunity to speak about poetry in an online learning mode. And these three qualities of adaptation, creativity, and innovation that I feel are essential to teaching poetry online in occasions such as we've all had recently with the lockdown. I'm John Ryan. I'm associated with Southern Cross University and the University of Notre Dame in Australia, but I'm also a visiting scholar at Untag, Surabaya between March and June. So I'm very happy for this opportunity to speak to you all today. So just briefly, an outline of what I'll do. teaching poetry online and some of the ideas in the literature there, but then teaching poetry online to Indonesian students. And I was curious about what kinds of research has already been done in that area. And I'd like to then present to you a case study of a 2020 Untag poetry course that I was involved in. And I'd like to present 3 learning strategies in particular that I developed. The first is Zoom open mic poetry reading sessions. The second is verse story group performances. So the verse story as a kind of hybrid between poetry and prose, and also involving a collaborative element between the students. The class anthology process and how that has been affected by the online mode. And then how I tried to introduce students to the professional world of poetry through such things as poetry publication opportunities for them. And then some reflections on what worked and what perhaps didn't work. So just briefly, I'm an active writer, editor, teacher, and promoter of poetry. It's my main focus of research and creative practice. For the last 3 years before coming to Untag, I developed a poetry program in New South Wales, Australia, in collaboration with a writers' center there, a community writers' center. The aim of this program that I developed was to develop environmental awareness through traditional and face-to-face poetry workshops with a range of age groups. So I worked with students in high school all the way to retirees over the age of 80 who are interested in developing their poetry skills. But once again, this occurred in a traditional kind of format of face-to-face interaction. So in March 2020, I came to Untag and began to interact with the English literature students. And I'm always interested when I first speak to students is to gauge their interest in poetry or their experiences with poetry. And as I expected, there were probably 2 out of 30 students who expressed a keen interest in poetry, but the majority seemed intimidated by the genre of poetry, the critique of poetry, analytical reading of poetry, but also the idea of having to write a poem in English. And so I've borne that in mind as I've interacted with the students, and that there can be a fear of poetry, and especially within the requirements of a formal academic course. So the Untag case study that I'm presenting consists of 35 second-year students. Since the coronavirus restrictions came into effect in March, about 80% of our interaction has taken place online, and specifically through Zoom, Edmodo, WhatsApp, and email. So I was very much interested in how to maximize the use of these tools to still make the learning experience positive for the students, to give them a positive view of poetry and what it can do for their analytical skills, for their English language skills as well. And so the challenge for me has been what I call fostering digital poetic literacy. And I define that as the ability of students to create, interpret, and critique poetry in online settings. But the question is, how did I go about fostering this? What worked and what didn't? And that's an important concept for this question of, when you have a poetry course, do you teach the writing of the poetry alongside the critique of the poetry? Or do you begin with critique and then leave the writing of the poetry for later in the teaching? Okay. 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 So teaching poetry online, this is some of what has been researched previously. And we can think of poetic literacy in the digital age. So online modes encourage the transformation of traditional classroom-based poetry teaching methods. So while some of our teaching methods might remain the same, The reality is that we are faced with a transformation of those methods when we shift to an online format. But at the same time, moving to that online format presents opportunities for, as I've found, collaboration, innovation, and internationalization. What I mean by internationalization is exposing students to the international poetry community, those communities that exist in physical places around the world, but also those communities that exist on social media, on Facebook, and elsewhere. And also giving students a sense for the professional world of poetry, and specifically the world of publishing poetry. So Paget and Curwood defined this idea of poetic literacy as the ability to create, interpret, and critique poetry. And I want to propose the idea of digital poetic literacy as the ability to create, interpret, and critique poetry in online environments. So digital poetic literacy requires literacy both with the visual environment and the poetic genre, right? So we have two aims when we're developing digital poetic literacy. Torres, in his study, talks about new learning conditions, and that teachers and students, authors and readers need to engage with new cognitive modalities, What does that mean? For me, it simply means new ways of learning online that draw from the medium of the digital environment, new cognitive modalities. So it's something to bear in mind. And this idea of an open pedagogy that uses creativity, imagination, and invention. So the idea is very much that shifting from a traditional classroom-based poetry teaching environment to an online teaching environment, while it has its limitations in terms of face-to-face contact and so forth, there are particular opportunities that emerge when we transition to online environments, specifically with poetry. So we see new literacies emerging from collaboration and networking between the students. And I'll show you how those ideas of collaboration and networking and new thinking skills filter through some of the exercises and projects that I've implemented for the students. So Paget and Curwood, in their discussion of teaching poetry to, in this case, to grade school students, give this interesting list of immediate steps of implementation or action. So provide students opportunities to read and view rich mentor texts that model the use of grammar, punctuation, themes, and poetic techniques. Now, a rich mentor text could be Robert Frost's The Road Less Taken, or it could be other poems that are part of the canon of our teaching of poetry to speakers of English as another language. We recommend implementing classroom activities in which students can work collaboratively to write poetry. And poetry is often perceived as a very solitary endeavor, something that one does in private of one's home, something that reveals personal experiences that in fact requires a kind of confidence or a release, unveiling of one's inner life. But to promote within the students the idea that poetry can be a collaborative endeavor suits the online medium quite well, in my opinion. They also recommend asking students to be explicit about their sources of inspiration. So a few of you have asked questions in the seminar already about how to stimulate your own writing and how to stimulate an interest in writing among your students. And I think sources of inspiration is the way to go. And so that may mean allowing students to identify what inspires them to begin with, and then to give them the structure for writing poems or begin to write poems about what inspires them. The other alternative is to give students a broad spectrum of possible topics. Some might be inspired by nature. Some might be inspired by family life or by culture. So including a broad spectrum of writing topics might allow a student to attach to one of those and identify their source of inspiration. Constructive feedback, both from students and from the instructor, is essential for especially for an online mode, where those opportunities outside of the classroom for feedback may not come up. For example, seeing students on the campus and so forth. Those opportunities are much more limited, of course, in the online mode. Sharing outstanding examples of students' poetry and to build confidence, and also to recognize the really strong points of a particular piece of writing, and then to provide that constructive feedback to the students about their poems. And so I believe this kind of approach can help to ease the fear that many students have intrinsically about poetry, and then perhaps secondarily about learning poetry online. There are a lot of what they call online affinity spaces that can be used for mediating students' learning of poetry. One is called Figment, another is called Fan Fiction, and these are all methods for allowing students to develop a kind of sense of poetry learning as an international community. So I haven't used Figment or Fan Fiction, but I can recommend simple online tools such as Poetry Machine, which is a very nice exercise for poetry writing, where even if the students are not familiar with a haiku or a limerick or a quatrain, they can simply click on one of these categories and then input their own terms through a number of very easy to use prompts. And then the website generates a poem. So at least that gives the student a sense for, especially students who are a bit fearful about poetry, a sense and a very strong framework for creating a poem on virtually any topic. And there are websites such as Power Poetry, where you can create poetry groups, and that group can then interface with other poetry groups around the world. So there are a lot of tools already available, and it's a matter just of how you wish to integrate these sorts of tools into an online environment. So we've discussed teaching poetry online. How about teaching poetry online to Indonesian students? Well, in fact, there's not a lot of literature about this particular area of creative writing and ESOL in Indonesia. Tiafinian talks about the idea that many lecturers simply avoid the use of poetry in English literature classrooms because of difficult language and cultural references that may seem obscure or hard to comprehend. But Rami talks about poetry as helping students become more sensitive to language and promoting language acquisition. And that's how I view poetry in the classroom, online or traditional, that it can help develop language skills, but it's a matter of how we use it in the classroom. And it's a matter of how we select our materials. So Utami also discusses poetry's use in comprehension, in conversation, in pronunciation, vocabulary development, and of course in writing. And poetry can also be used to develop awareness of particular value systems. So Dewey, in her study from 2018, discusses the teaching of poetry to Indonesian students to promote environmental awareness, sustainability, and human nature relation awareness. That could also be the same for teaching about culture, politics, gender, and other sorts of issues. Poetry is such a versatile medium. I recommend using sample poems with uncomplicated language, and then giving poetry writing activities with achievable aims, and to carefully maximize learning, but also to minimize anxiety. So it may be simply a matter of write a minimum of 12 lines. That's very achievable for students. And so I'm not so much interested in quantity. I'm interested in quality. And I'm interested in students enjoying the process of learning about poetry, both in terms of critique and in terms of creativity. Now, in terms of the difficult references that can appear in poems, I think it's a matter of unpacking those references to allow students to have kind of cross-cultural understandings. And so if a poem is about an environmental issue in the United States having to do with water, perhaps that environmental issue could be related to water issues in Indonesia, or better yet, water issues in the city where you are, where your university is located in Surabaya, Jakarta, or elsewhere. So those difficult allusions can be opportunities to enhance cross-cultural understanding. So let's look at the case study that I mentioned of the poetry course at UNTAG. And I was very happy to see that part of the curriculum, English curriculum at UNTAG, is a course devoted to poetry because I believe so much in poetry's capacity to develop all sorts of skills. The first, with the transition to the online learning mode, the first technique that I developed is one that was quite simple to use and rather enjoyable for the students, and in fact for myself. And I called it Zoom Open Mic Poetry Sessions. Part of the community of poetry outside of online environments is meeting at cafes, meeting in public places, and having readings, open mic sessions, poetry being a kind of event that takes us back to the oral traditions of literature that are present in all literary traditions across the world. And so this idea that a textual medium can be a spoken or oral medium, I think is very important. And that's one of the strengths of poetry, to reinforce the oral nature of literature. And so how I structured this particular activity is I gave the students 3 exercises, poetry writing exercises. They were each a little different so that I could capture those students who were perhaps interested in writing about childhood memories, or writing about the coronavirus pandemic, or writing about the natural world and sustainability. So I gave them a choice. They should choose one topic, send me their poem for feedback. I would send the poem back to them. They would revise it. So part of that process would be them learning basic grammatical changes and other ways that you might structure a poem in stanzas. So I'd have some very careful, direct feedback to give them. I send that back to them. They revise the poem, and they then prepare to have a reading of that poem. Now, the reading was a group reading. It took place on Zoom, and it also allowed me to help them develop their pronunciation, articulation, and reading skills, presentation skills. So simple tips about speaking slowly and loudly, not too loud, but just being aware of that, articulating words carefully, right? Begin by saying the title of the poem. Tell us your name. Make it an occasion. Assume that no one knows who you are and you're on the stage in front of 1,000 people and you're presenting this title of the poem you've written. You're telling us your name and then you're reading your poem. Now, poetry offers an excellent opportunity to practice the art of the pause, the dramatic pause. That dramatic pause can take place between stanzas. It can take place after punctuation. It can take place simply in the gaps between words on the page. Now, I told them I'd give them feedback on their pronunciation after their reading so that they didn't become alarmed that I would interrupt them halfway through their reading. It also provided the opportunity to develop Zoom etiquette skills, such as muting the audience, muting their mics. And those kind of Zoom etiquette skills came in very useful throughout the online teaching experience. Okay, so the second technique I've developed in this course is what I call verse story group performances. Now, a verse story is an interesting creature because it is essentially a story told in poetry. It's a genre unto itself. And you might see it called a verse novel on some occasions. but I chose to call it a verse story, and I encourage the students to write short verse stories in groups of 2 to 3 students. So this culminated over 3 weeks. First, the students should identify team members. They should identify a title, identify characters, if there will be any, a setting, and then a synopsis. Now, a verse story, like a novel or like a narrative, a piece of fiction, uses dialogue, uses setting, uses characterization, character development. So it uses the elements of the novel, but in the form of poetry. So it's a good opportunity for students to think about how poetry and prose might intermingle. So once I gave students feedback on their proposal, they then completed a verse story in their groups. And then in the 3rd week, we had a reading of these stories. Now, this is important in my view, which is to make things special events in these Zoom lectures, special occasions, something maybe the students can look forward to, enjoy, but at least prepare for. And so towards that, I developed a simple reading, a playlist or a lineup of students who will read at what times and the title, so they can prepare for reading at that particular in that particular sequence. But more than that, there's still this effort to make online learning much more of an occasion than just simply another lecture. With these collaborative verse stories, it also allowed me the chance to work very carefully on their grammar. So one of the challenges with students writing poetry is maintaining verb tense and avoiding shifting between too many different verb tenses, which then dilutes the meaning of the poem. In fact, mostly staying in the present tense offers an immediacy and an impact. So I encourage students to do that. And instead of dew left on the leaves, how about dew glimmers on leaves? Instead of a sparrow perched around, a sparrow perches around. It's happening now in the mind of the reader when you use that present tense. So that's now. The 3rd topic I'll discuss, or technique, is the class anthology. So this is something that I seeded in the minds of the students early on, that we're going to create a class anthology of poetry, and it's going to be their poetry. They're going to write the poems, and they're going to produce the anthology. So this provided an opportunity to discuss what an anthology is, that it literally means a collection of flowers, but that an anthology is different to a collection. An anthology is a number of works by different authors, whereas a collection is a number of works by the same author. And so we discussed the history of the anthology, dating back here to the 1930s, of poetry anthologies. And I also introduced some of my own anthologies, as well as some niche or specialized anthologies, such as this one about plants and poetry. So this is what the students have put together so far. It's a collection of 45 poems, plus the verse stories, another 11 verse stories. So that's a collection of over close to 60 individual works. So that's impressive. I coach the students in identifying themes within the anthology, and you can see that the poems are organized under those themes. Now, what I wanted to impart to the students is that poetry is a professional practice. And so they may work after graduation in the field of editing or publishing or marketing. And so I called each of their groups departments. And so the students worked in a submissions department, where they took the submissions from the students, their poems and stories, and then passed those submissions to the editing department, who then looked carefully at the poems and made recommendations for any changes. The formatting department, I had a department simply for the title, because the title of an anthology is that important. And so the students surveyed the class, the students in the department surveyed the class for the most popular title. The book design and the cover design departments, very, very important, and have exceptional design skills. And I wanted to bring that out in their learning process. And so I assigned students to the cover and to the book. So the book being the internal portion of the book and the cover being the very important front and back cover. That was an opportunity, for example, with the cover design department to discuss what an ISBN is. How do you get an ISBN? What's the meaning? What's the value? What's the purpose? What a copyright page is. And also what it's like to collaborate with other departments. Marketing, so important. Students who can assist with developing a kind of promotional campaign around the anthology, creating a promotional flyer, compiling biographies for the students. So this process parallels the publication process for almost any book from start to end. And then finally, a social media department focused on the use of Twitter and other social media platforms for promoting the book that will be published. Production, dealing with the technical matters around the anthology. Do we print it as a PDF, or do we publish it as a PDF, or do we publish it on a site, a website that can host it, such as WordPress, or do we print it? And each one of those platforms has a particular technical consideration that the production department should consider. And then finally, in art and photography departments that deal with the visual material of the anthology. And so that anthology is forthcoming, but the online mode, it worked well. It is working well in the online mode, insofar as students can communicate within their departments to achieve these particular goals listed on the right side. And finally, this notion of imparting to students that poetry is an international and a professional community. And so I had the occasion to edit a book of poetry on the coronavirus. And I was able then to invite the students to contribute their poems to this anthology. For many students, it will be their first publication. It's something that they can add to their professional profile, to their CVs. And I made that known to them that when an employer looks at your record, if the employer sees that you've published something in an international outlet, that certainly is going to fare well for your professional development. And so this is another example of the sorts of strategies I've used in the online environment. Now here is the final anthology. A few students did contribute poems to this coronavirus anthology that I edited with a scholar in India. It also provided an opportunity to discuss sites such as archive.org, the first online archive, the biggest online archive, and an incredibly useful tool for research. And so there are these multiple learning points that can arise from any one poetry activity. So reflections on these strategies: digital poetic literacy for Indonesian literature students, adaptation. The coronavirus shutdown required adapting a traditional face-to-face poetry course to an online mode. And those learning opportunities resulted from the push to adapt for me as a lecturer and for the students. Creativity, we're teaching creativity, but we're finding creative means to teach creativity. And for me, that teaching the writing of poetry, the creation of poetry, alongside or within the critique or analysis of poetry is essential to developing digital poetic literacy. I believe that poetic creativity can be developed in students with differing aptitudes. Other teachers of poetry think poetry is an innate gift or a skill, but I believe it can be developed and fostered in students. And innovation emerging from uncertainty. So as I aspired to innovate, sometimes thinking that something may not work, or it may fall apart, or it may break down. So too were the students pushed to become innovative, to push through that kind of uncertainty that they had, and to find ways to approach the course requirements. And finally, some limitations. Collaboration between students in online environments presents a number of challenges. There's the technology challenge. Do students have bandwidth enough to participate in Zoom readings and other sorts of online events? There's also the emotional well-being that's of students being isolated at home in rooms, having perhaps limited income during these periods. So I think that's something to be borne in mind as well. So in conclusion, there's certainly a need for further research into teaching poetry in an online mode to Indonesian students. The existing literature is very limited. So it's a really good topic for someone to research more, and I think it's an important area. Subsequent research should also be undertaken into the effectiveness and the limitations of teaching the creative and the critical at the same time. Do you teach the critical in the first portion of the course and then move to the creative part? Do you teach the creative part during the first part of the course and then the critical? Or do you teach these in an integrated fashion? So that's the question. Care should be exercised with the selection of learning material. There's a lot of online content that can expose students to genres such as performance poetry and how poems can be mediums of vocalizing environmental grief or oppression of certain people in the world. So performance poetry is a very important one in an online setting. And on a side note, I'd recommend avoiding the use of popular poems like Frost, The Road Not Taken. Now, the problem with that is there's a lot of material already available online for students to perhaps copy from when they're completing assignments. So even though those canonical poems are important, like The Road Not Taken, I'd recommend using poems with limited or no critique readily available, and even using some of the teacher or lecturer's own work to give students practice in their analytical skills. So just some sample biography, a bibliography for you, a bit of research that's been done on teaching poetry in EFL environments in Indonesia, but also teaching poetry in an online format. I'm happy to share that with anyone who's interested. So that's all for me, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'll turn it over to Ibu Grace. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. John Charles Ryan. Such an excellent presentation. I believe it will be very useful for all of us, especially for me, when you remind us to take action and you share the steps for immediate implementation. And when I also found the sample of exercises for teaching poetry during the online learning very useful for me. Thank you so much once again. So I would like to thank all the presenters once again for their informative and interesting talk. So we have come to the end of the presentations, dear presenters and attendees. So it's now time for us to the question and answer session. And turn out that we have already received a lot of questions throughout the presentations. And most of the questions have been answered directly by the panelists or the presenters. Yet we still have around 15 to 20 minutes for answering some questions that haven't been answered yet. So here I would like to read some questions. The first two questions are for Ibu Niki Tantri. Ibu Niki, are you ready? The first question is from Dan Goki. Which media is the best used in online learning with 40 students? Which media is the best used in online learning with 40 students? And the second, still for Ibu Niki Tantri, from Azizah Quinlan. I would like to ask Niki how effective online study is compared to studying in class. Thank you, Ibu Niki.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. In here, when we talk about what media that is best used in online learning with 40 students, actually, when we want to conduct online learning, we should not think about what kind of media or application is the best. Best. Okay. Main point it is when you try to implement online learning, you have to review again what is your learning goals. That's the first. Yeah. And then after um, the second is you have to see from your students or your participants, yeah, um, because as you know that not all students have the facility like internet or how many internet credit that they have to do online learning. This is the most important that we have to consider in conducting online learning. That is why in my ppt before I stated that in online learning there is synchronous and asynchronous learning. If you can define your learning goals into these two times, I think you can decide in what media that is best for your student to learn. Because, for example, from my friend's experience, she said that she wanted to use Zoom. However, all of the students cannot online all the time because they do not have internet credit. So what we should do. But so this is the how to say the event that we have to consider, that it's not all the time we have to use synchronous. Sometimes we can use asynchronous. So this is the first question, and the second question is what is the effective? Which one is the effective, online study or study at the class? I cannot say that both of them. Both of them, yeah. I could say that one of them is the best. Yeah. One of them is the most of them increase students' knowledge. And the main important in this is how these two learning modes can engage students in learning. So that's my answer. I hope it answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ibu Niki. The next question I will read is for Ibu Fika. Are you ready, Ibu Fika? It's from Reynaldi Hengro from STFT Makassar. I would like to ask some question first to Ibu Prihandari Satvikadewi. M.Med.Com, I really like writing, but my problem is I'm not productive. So how to develop productivity in creative writing? Do I have to write every day?
Thank you, Renaldi. I used to think that productivity is about how much writing we can produce, how much short stories, essays, or articles we can write within a week or a day or in a couple of hours. But now I think the other way. Productivity for me now is not a matter of quantity of the writings only, but also how much we read other works of other writers. Of course, we have to write every day. For a writer, writing is not an obligation anymore. It is the need. Once we start to write every day and the activity becomes a habit, then we will automatically feel the need of writing. We can use any device to write down our ideas or elements of ideas, the details, maybe one or two sentences, doesn't matter. In my experience, writing a short story is not something we can do uh, in a hurry, but still we have to set our own deadline because the setting of the story might be outdated if we postpone to write the story. Another tips for Rinaldi and maybe who another attendance. Another tips is to get more productive is joining writing communities. There are a lot of online writing communities, I guess, and they're in social media, in Facebook or Instagram. We can just choose one suitable with our interest most. By joining a writing community, we won't feel like we are all alone anymore writing by ourselves. Some of writing communities even give writing challenges to its member and even publish an anthology within a very short time, within a month, and they can produce an anthology, a short story anthology. Sometimes I think we can be more creative when we are under pressure. So yes, we have to write every day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ibu Vika. Now, there's a question for Mr. John Ryan. This is from Norita Prasetya Wardani. Hello, I'm Norita. I want to ask Mr. Ryan, is that possible to apply poetry to mechanical engineering students? So, is it possible to apply poetry to mechanical engineering students who lack motivation to study English using online class? Is it possible, Mr. Ryan? Time is yours.
Okay. Thank you for the question. It's very interesting. And I would say, yes, it certainly is possible. And how you might go about it is to show the students some examples of scientists and engineers who have become poets. I can't think offhand of any engineers who have been poets, but certainly a writer like William Carlos Williams was a doctor, a physician, and in his spare time he wrote poetry. So I would begin by talking about scientists who also were poets. I would then show some poems written about technical issues like science or engineering or astrology. There's a lot of that kind of poetry available. Under this heading of science and poetry, if you look up science and poetry online, you'll find some examples. And thirdly, I would then ask students to take a technical passage out of an engineering manual or engineering textbook, and then write a poem that summarizes the idea of that technical passage. So that will give them some practice both with comprehending some technical English, but then also putting it into a format that could be enjoyable for others to read. So that will also build their English language skills. So yes, it's a good question. I hope you try to implement that in your teaching of engineering. Thank you. Thanks for a great question.
Thank you so much, Mr. John Ryan. This seems to be the last question, and I would like to have Ibu Natalia and Ibu Novalita to answer this question. This is from Norita Prasetya Wardani. To all panelists, is it possible to apply poetry to, oh, this is already, sorry. Are there songs whose lyrics are like poetry? Can it still be called poetry or not? Are there songs whose lyrics are like poetry? Can it still be called poetry or not? Who would like to answer this? Ibu Natalia, Ibu Novalita, would you like?
Okay, thank you, Ibu Grace, and also for the question. Yes, I'm interested in this question, yeah, because we know that so many songs have beautiful lyrics. It's so beautiful, we find that the lyrics are poetic. So in these terms, when some songs can stimulate our perceptions, in my opinion, yes, it can be said that this is included a sung poetry. Well, Ibu Natalia maybe can add to my explanations or to my point of view here.
Ya, nanti kami screenshot foto bareng.
Sorry, Bu Grace, what was the question?
Ya, grup barangkali atau mereka screenshot sendiri juga bisa.
Hello? Hello, Bu Grace?
Yeah, thank you. Ibu Novalita, Ibu Natalia, do you want to add something?
Sorry, what was the question? Could you please repeat again?
Okay.
Was about the song?
Yeah, there are some songs. Wait, I lost the question. I'm sorry.
Probably already.
Yeah, The participant asked if songs with beautiful lyrics can be categorized as poetry.
Oh, okay. This one from Lenovo, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I think this is the area of Mr. John. But okay, then I would like to try to answer. Yeah. Well, yes, I love to sing. I love songs, and I love also listening songs which the lyrics are like poetry. Also, yeah. So for me, perhaps that can be a part of poetry, but also yeah, because there is a rhyming, yeah, rhymes. So because by listening the songs, by enjoying it, following the lyrics, we also learn how to do poetry. That's from me, Bu Grace. Perhaps Mr. John could express more.
Do you want to add, Mr. John?
Oh, certainly, yeah. I think that poetry is naturally an oral tradition. That's where it came from. Certainly in the English language, it evolved from the great oral epics, Beowulf, and all of those. And so we should remember that poetry is very much something that is spoken and heard and performed. So I think of songwriting and poetry as very closely related. And many song lyrics are poetic, certainly they're poems in themselves. And I think one of the things you can do, in fact, in a class is often students have a musical ability. Literary studies students might have a musical ability. So encouraging them to write song lyrics and perhaps even perform their song as part of an assignment can help reinforce that idea that poetry is essentially an oral medium, even though it's still written and published as text. It's still very much about how it sounds and how it's spoken and performed. So, yeah, that's a good question, and thank you for the opportunity to respond. Okay, over to you, Blue Grace.
Still
So
mute.
we can hear you. We can't hear you.
Sorry. Thank you so much once again, Ibu Natalia, Mr. John Ryan, and Ibu Novalita. I'm afraid that we have come to the end of the program, but the committee just asked me if it is possible for all of us to take picture together, though we cannot do it as we did in the offline seminar. So we should all switch on the video. Yeah, so that we can like take pictures together. All panelists and attendees. So participants, could you like switch on the video button of video mode? So we could like take pictures together. Thank you so much, everybody. Finally, we come to the end of our program today. Once again, I would like to thank all the presenters for their informative and interesting talks. Mr. John Charles Ryan, Ibu Natalia Christiani, Ibu Prihandari Satvikadewi, Ibu Novalita Tungka, and Ibu Niki Raga Tantri. Thank you so much. Big claps for all of you. And dear audience, thank you so much for your active participation today. Hopefully, the program today, all the presentations will be beneficial for all of us. Thank you for your attention. Good afternoon.
Afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you all. Thank you, Untag. Thank you, Bu Fika, Mbak Niki, Mr.
Thank
John.
you, Pak John. Thank you, Bu Natalia.
Thank you, Mr.
Lita
John.
from Poso.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Farid.